r/malicious compliance. First story. The professor asked me to share info that I did not want to share. A genogram is like a family tree, but with extra symbols. For instance, a beer bottle for my alcoholic father, and lines connecting each person. The type of line dictates the type of relationship: close, smothering, distant, estranged, abusive, etc. I studied social work in school. I found myself doing 3 genograms over the course of my schooling. One for Intro to Social Work, one for Sociology of Mental Health, and then another in my last year. I have some not fun family history and trauma, and so these assignments were never my favorite, but my teachers for the first 2 didn't pressure me to disclose only what I wanted and be vague. One even said I could do a fictional family. Lol. The last one did not. See, one thing we learned was that bringing up a client's trauma outside of a therapeutic environment can be harmful. We were BSWs, which are not qualified therapists. During intakes and assessments, we learned to tell clients that they don't have to give more details than they wanted to. There's a whole host of reasons behind this, but I'll spare you all the lecture. I brought this up in class after this teacher assigned an extensive genogram with an accompanying 5-page essay on what we learned about ourselves. A third of the class expressed the same concerns. His reasoning was, you might be doing this with your clients and you shouldn't ask them to do anything you wouldn't yourself, not unless I get a graduate degree and become a therapist or psychologist. The teacher also didn't give us an answer when asked if resources for therapy would be provided if this brought up any students' past trauma that they needed to talk about. Oh, and of course, he added, this will only be shared with me and is 100% confidential unless you choose to share. Literally not any of our concerns, but I don't want to share any of my deeply personal business with this man. The assignment did not bother me as much as the hypocrisy of it all. I said, between class assignments and therapy, this will be my 5th one. Could I turn one of those in and be given an alternate assignment? He wouldn't budge. He said I didn't need to disclose anything I didn't want to, but followed it up with, but I expect you to take this assignment seriously. And when I turned in a rough draft with about as much as I was willing to disclose, he said it wasn't detailed enough. Alright, fucker. It's showtime. I have a lot of family trauma that is not mine to disclose, and I rarely ever disclose it. At least not with anyone who would ever meet the folks involved. My own is embarrassing enough, but definitely not as bad as some. But I put all that shit down on there and wrote about it. Then, the following week, the teacher asked if any students would like to share their genogram if they are comfortable. My hand shot up. I will spare you the details, but I basically gave the class a content notice to allow anyone to leave who may be triggered, a common thing in social work school, and then I just shared all of it. All of the relationships, and why they were fucked up, and why I hate my dad and my sister resents my mom and all that. Cheery smile on my face the whole time. The teacher uncomfortably thanked me for my bravery. A few students shifted in their seats, feeling uneasy. Others smiled. Then my friend volunteered to share. She didn't like the assignment either, but she's not one to argue with teachers. Her presentation trumped mine. Girl had a real messed up family, and by the end, she was red in the face and everyone was super uncomfortable. Next person to volunteer to share was this girl who was in foster care. I'm not even sure if her sharing was malicious compliance, but hers was the most uncomfortable to hear. She started to cry at the end. Another student who also grew up in foster care started to tear up. The teacher cut us off after that. Another teacher overheard, and the following week, we had some serious discussions in class. I and the other students who shared were referred to the school's mental health center. Lol. Another teacher I had a good relationship with checked in with me, and I told her what happened. I can't tell for certain what went on, but it created a stink in their department. It's been several years since I graduated, but I heard there is now an alternative assignment for the genogram. So, lesson is, don't tell social work students to do something that you tell them to never do to their clients, and you don't get into social work unless you are traumatized AF. Second story. Boss micromanages even though she doesn't know my field. I finally stop arguing and do it her way, and it doesn't end well. I'm the sole communication/social media person for a small company. I went to school in this field and have done it professionally in a few different spheres. My boss, on the other hand, doesn't even know what a Facebook or Twitter page looks like or what any of the buttons do. Yet she still micromanages me all day every day, and I'm going crazy. I always schedule our email campaigns spread out enough so that people aren't getting bombarded, generally one per week at most. This is one of the most basic rules of comms and should be common sense, even if you don't have a degree in this. Multiple times she has demanded that I post something immediately, even though the next few slots are already filled with posts that are more time sensitive. She always tells me to just send both in the same day, and I have explained to her numerous times that that's a terrible idea, in nicer terms. Well, I gave my 2 weeks notice this past Monday, so I don't care anymore about fighting for what's best for the company. This time, I said I was going to push back each of our scheduled posts by one slot, so we can post the listing for my job vacancy immediately, because for once the new post actually is more time sensitive than the others. Once again, she tells me to just post both the job listing and the one originally planned for that day. Fine. I sent out both. It's been 3 days and we've already lost 11% of our subscribers and nobody has yet applied for my job since that listing was buried. I present stats on the success of our email campaigns, website, social media, etc. once per week to my boss's boss. I look forward to explaining this drop to him in a few days. Third story. I have to make my own special Thanksgiving meal. Oh, it'll be special alright. With the holiday season coming up, I've been thinking about past years. My family and I differ in a lot of ways, but I especially differ from my mother. Ever since I was little, we couldn't see eye to eye. She's the type of person who prioritizes looking good in social settings, whereas I'm the type to not give a flying dolphin. She has expressed deep shame in who I am, and I have lost track of how many times she angrily asked, "Why can't you be normal?" As I've grown into an adult, I've found ways to understand her and try to keep peace. We learned we have a few things in common, like places to go, preferred scents and perfumes, and most surprisingly, a fondness for weed. She tends to hide that last fact. Now, one of the things my mom has been very bad about is tolerating that I'm vegan. I started as a teenager, but my mom wanted no part of it. She immediately stopped cooking anything for me, including plain side veggies that she would normally cook for everyone. Whatever, I learned to cook. Whenever family get-togethers happened, such as during holidays, birthdays, or any other event, my mom and her family deliberately offered nothing for me. I would have to bring my own food, or go hungry. Again, whatever, with their attitude, I don't think I'd trust anything they offered me anyway. One year, my parents were hosting Thanksgiving. As per usual, I expected to make my own mini Thanksgiving meal, while she and my dad prepared the real Thanksgiving meal. Now, normally, I prepare a veggie roast, gravy, several sides, and a dessert. I make more than enough, and always place my stuff on the same table with the rest of the food, in case anyone wants any. Every year before, nobody else wanted anything. Weeks before the holiday, my mom did her annual tradition of reminding me to make my own food, because she won't make anything for me. I already had recipes lined up, and, until she said something, was feeling pretty stoked about what I had planned. Her unnecessary reminder only served to piss me off. I made a new, more maliciously compliant plan. Fast forward to Thanksgiving. It's going pretty normal. Annoying relatives, loud TV blaring, my parents and I trying yet again to somehow share the oven. Just before the meal was to begin, some last-minute guests arrived. 2 of my dad's cousins had traveled a few hours to get here. I barely knew them, but that was about to change. Shortly after, we were bonding up a storm. We had some overlapping interests, agreed on politics, and they wanted to try my food. Sure. But I had to warn them, the gravy is a bit special. See, what my mom doesn't know is that when she reminded me to cook, it actually reminded me that I had made some canned butter using vegetable oil just the other day. I figured, screw it, if nobody's going to eat any of my food anyway, I might as well get high off it. So I looked into vegan gravy recipes and used my special oil. When I explained the situation to my new favorite relatives, they thought it was hilarious. They also immediately wanted to try my gravy. We ended up chilling around the fire, laughing like old best friends. They promised never to tell anyone what I did. We now look forward to seeing each other every year. I haven't added any special ingredients to my big meals since then, but they still make space on their plates to try everything I make. TL. Doctor, intolerant mom demands I make my own vegan meals for every family event. I make my food with pot, which I know my mom loves, but won't eat. End up bonding and getting stoned with also my family members instead.